Right, this is a continuation of section 12.1, day 3. I'm going to go through a few word problems that are similar to what you did yesterday, just in case you didn't understand it. You'll need to know these for the quiz that will be scheduled for tomorrow's assignment. So we have a golfer standing at the tee, looking up to the green on the hill. So you can see him pictured there. If the tee is 36 yards lower than the green, and the angle of elevation from the tee to the hole is 12 degrees. Find the distance from the tee to the hole. So if you like to golf, here's a real life situation where you can use trigonometry or these trig ratios. So they gave us a picture here, which is helpful. They labeled the 36 yards, which is opposite of your 12-degree angle. It wants to know the distance from the tee to the hole, which is the hypotenuse side. So you know the opposite and hypotenuse, so that's using so or sine. So we have sine of 12 degrees is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse side, so 36 over x. We talked about solving these yesterday. You can multiply by the x and then divide by sine of 12 degrees. So in your calculator, again, make sure it's in degree mode and type in alpha y equals 36 over sine of 12 degrees. And press enter. You should get around 173.2 yards. So it's important on these word problems to also include your unit. Here's another question. I know Alice was big on roller coasters. So here's a real life scenario question about a roller coaster. The hill of a roller coaster has an angle of descent or an angle of depression of 60 degrees. Its vertical drop is 195 feet. Estimate the length of the hill. So we have our angle listed there is 60 degrees. The side that's opposite to that is 195 feet. And then the hypotenuse is opposite of that right angle. So that is pictured there. So the two sides that we know are opposite and hypotenuse. So again, we're going to use sine. So set up your ratio. Sine of 60 degrees equals 195 over x. Similar to the last problem, multiply by x, divide by sine of 60, and type it into your calculator. You get that the length of the hill is 225.2 feet. These next two questions, we have a ramp for unloading a moving truck has an angle of elevation of 32 degrees. If the top of the ramp is 4 feet above the ground, estimate the length of the ramp. So I kind of labeled it. It's kind of small, but over there in the picture, the side that's opposite the 32 degrees is the 4, and the hypotenuse is x. So set up your ratio. Sine of 32 degrees equals 4 over x. I didn't show the work here because it's very similar to the other two, but multiply by x and divide by sine of 32. So 4 divided by sine of 32 degrees, type that in the calculator, you get 7.5 feet for the length of the ramp. The ladder question didn't have a picture, so it's helpful to draw one. So I have my 14-foot ladder that's placed along the height of, or placed against a house at an angle of elevation of 72 degrees. How high above the ground is the ladder? So we have the 72 degree angle, the side that's opposite to that is x, and the hypotenuse is 14. So again, this also uses sine. Sine of 72 equals x over 14. Multiply both sides by 14. Type 14 sine of 72 in your calculator and you get 13.3 feet. All right, so this is the section that is new. So that was all previous examples of finding a side length on a right triangle using trig ratios. Now what if we have a missing angle measure? So they tell us something about two of the sides and we need to find the missing angle. So we're going to use the inverse function. So again, your calculator must be in degree mode for these questions. So find the measure of each angle round to the nearest tenth. So they want angle n. So I marked n with a little angle mark and labeled the sides that they have 6 and 10 as the opposite and the hypotenuse, which I should know by now uses sine. So sine of capital N equals the ratio of opposite over hypotenuse, which is 6 over 10. Now you can reduce that to 3/5 or leave it as 6/10. But notice in the next line, I have signed the -1. So there is a button on your calculator, which means I'm taking the inverse sign and typing in 6/10. So I'll show you here on the calculator. To check your mode again, click mode. Make sure it's the black is in degree mode and not radian. So once you've checked that, you need to get to the inverse sign. So you need to press the blue key first and then the sign button to get the -1 on sign. And then type 6 divided by 10. You can close the parentheses or not, it doesn't make a difference, but if you press enter, you get this. So then round that to the nearest tenth is 36.9 degrees. So missing degrees, make sure you put the degree symbol up in the corner. Letter B wanted the angle B, so I labeled that mark with a little angle symbol. Now the 8 and the 16 sides are the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So on this one, we're going to use cosine. So cosine of B equals the ratio of 8/16. Again, you can reduce that to 1/2 or just keep it as 8/16. But I'm going to use the inverse cosine this time. So I need second cosine. And then the fraction was 8/16 or 1/2. So 8/16. Press enter, you get 60. So 60 degrees is angle B. So pause the video, practice these problems on scratch paper, find the missing angles using your trig ratios, round to the nearest tenth. I would highly suggest you try these practice problems and then check them with the video answers before you move on to the quizzes to make sure you're getting those ones correct. So pause the video, try these 3. Okay, the answers are as follows. So for number 12, the 4 is the adjacent side and the 5 is the hypotenuse. So we needed the inverse cosine of 4/5, which is 36.9. And you should have degrees. The 13, the side that's opposite of x is 7, and the hypotenuse is 13, so that means the inverse sine was 7/13, which is 32.6. And number 14, the opposite side and the adjacent side are there, so we need tangent. The inverse tangent of 15/2 is 82.4 degrees. All right, so you have a last quizzes, 12 problems for this one. This is the last quizzes for the week, finding missing angle measures using trig ratios, and you will need a calculator and scratch paper to work out these problems first before you answer, and make sure your calculator is in degree mode.